Kamala Harris's speech at the Democratic National Convention outperformed Donald Trump's RNC convention monologue by 22%, with millions more tuning in to listen to the vice president, which pundits called a real dagger in the former president's heart. He was mocked for his scream of consciousness call to Fox News. The speech caps a successful week for the Democratic National Convention, which topped the audience for the GOP's gathering every night of last week. And Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign raised $540 million since it launched last month, including a surge bolstered by the DNC in Chicago and a total that amounts to a record for any campaign in history. The campaign raised $82 million during the convention last week, with the best hour coming after Harris delivered her acceptance speech Thursday night. And former President Donald Trump suggested on Sunday that he might skip a September 10th ABC News debate with Vice President Harris after agreeing to participate as the GOP presidential nominee earlier this month. The September 10th debate is the only one that both campaigns have officially committed to do with a network. And Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, former President Trump's running mate, evaded multiple questions Saturday about whether Trump's proposed zero tolerance policy on immigration would lead to a family separation of those immigrants. First, Vance told NBC News, Meet the Press, that before he imposed mass deportations, Trump would need to stop the bleeding. And a judge in Kentucky has dismissed core charges against two former Louisville police officials involved in the raid that ended in Breonna Taylor's death. Judge Charles Simpson of West Kentucky's U.S. District Court on Thursday last week said Taylor's death was triggered by the actions of her boyfriend, who opened fire when police arrived outside her Louisville apartment on March 13, 2020. And a second former Memphis police officer changed his plea to guilty on Friday in connection to alleged civil rights violations that ended in the beating death of Tyree Nichols. A change of plea for former officer Emmett Martin was entered in the courtroom of U.S. District Court Judge Mark Norris in Memphis, with prosecutors saying they will ask the judge to sentence Martin for a 40-year term in prison. And on Friday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dropped out of the race for president and endorsed Donald Trump. Later that night, he joined Trump at a campaign rally in Glendale, Arizona. During his speech, Kennedy mentioned the issues that he and Trump agreed on, such as having safe food, ending chronic disease, the chronic disease epidemic, he calls it, ending the Russia-Ukraine war, free speech, and rebuilding the middle class. Kennedy's family and close friends have denounced his endorsement of Trump and are speaking out against that endorsement on social media. And Donald Trump's outburst comes, that's that outburst on Fox News that many people watch, comes as VP Harris leads him by 3.6 percentage points in an average of national polls. One particularly striking new poll found VP Harris leading Donald Trump by as much as 7 points nationally. That is 50 to 43%. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go deep, where we dig behind those headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. Well, people are still talking about that Democratic National Convention, because that convention, in one word, was a vibe. Yes, a vibe. I guess that's two words. But I was there on the floor as a delegate for the great state of California, the state that is home to Vice President Kamala Harris, our new nominee, who accepted the nomination on the floor on Thursday. The convention brought together more than 20,000 people from across the country. Every night at the United Center, there were speeches, presentations, musical performances, stories of real people, lots of celebrity presence on that stage, starting at 5:30, some nights going into 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And then during the day at the convention, caucus meetings and lunches and receptions were held, many at the McCormick Place, which is basically the convention center for Chicago. Delegations from different states hosted breakfast meetings where key Democratic party leaders as well as elected officials would visit, make speeches, connect with voters, connect with constituents. Well, the convention is over, and the good news is that the ratings were incredibly high, much, much higher than the RNC that happened a couple of weeks ago. President Donald Trump's speech garnered about 25 million viewers, whereas VP Harris's speech garnered almost 30 million viewers in real time. There were other substantive differences of the two conventions. The roll call, for example, Tuesday night. If you haven't seen it, go online and look at the side-by-side videos of the RNC roll call compared to the DNC roll call that featured none other than Lil Jon, other celebrities, and music that was played by DJ Cassidy representing something from each of the 50 states. It was the hottest, littest party that you can imagine being on the floor as that roll call happened. Wednesday, we heard from Tim Walz. We heard from Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, a host of other Democratic leaders. And then on Thursday night, we heard from none other than Kamala Harris herself. We got to meet her great nieces. We got to meet her sister, Maya, her niece. Just so many elements of that convention that were just incredible. And something else that was different this year, and that was the presence of 250 content creators. A lot of folks have been asking me, what's a content creator? So we decided that today we would introduce you to one of those content creators that was on the floor, was at the DNC for the 4 days last week in Chicago, and talk about the importance of the DNC's decision to give credentials, very coveted credentials, I might say, to these 250 content creators. Ryan Alexander Holmes, who's an actor and one of the content creators, is going to join us in this hour, as well as our resident social media expert, Professor Andre Brock, who takes us to school every time he's on the show about all things media. We're going to talk about how significant it was to have content creators like Ryan at the DNC and what that might mean for voter turnout and for the ultimate outcome of our November election. So when we come forward, we're going to be talking about content creators at the DNC. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has taken up going to the park to practice yoga.
My dad's going to a club, but not a book club, a salsa club.
Finding new hobbies comes with age.
My mom has started getting lost and not knowing where she's going.
Becoming lost or disoriented doesn't. Confusion with time or place may be a sign of Alzheimer's. An early diagnosis can help improve the quality of life for your loved one. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Downy Rinse and Refresh. Break up with stinky clothes.
Rinse it out.
Every now and then I get a little bit tired of the stinks that just will never come out.
Oh, Downy in the rinse straight.
Every now and then I rinse it out. One wash and it delivers. One wash, it smells so clean. Downy Rinse and Refresh, it's a dream.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes 100% of odor in just one wash. Guaranteed.
Whoa, it's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
That's what they call me.
Mind if I get a selfie?
Yeah, sure thing. Say no fees or minimums on your Capital One checking account.
Wow, that's a keeper. So, where are you heading?
I'm off to spread the good news that Capital One helps people keep more money in their wallet with no overdraft fees.
Oh, you're the best Capital One Bank guy.
Hey, mind if I get a selfie?
Sure.
Say, Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and in this hour, we are talking about content creators and their presence at the DNC, the significance of having content creators cover a major party's convention. This is the first time it's ever been done, not just by Democrats, but as far as we know, Republicans have never done this. And joining me in this hour is Ryan Alexander Holmes. He is an actor and one of those content creators that was at the DNC. Also joining me in this hour is Professor Andre Brock. He is our resident social media and media expert. Welcome back, Professor Brock, and welcome, Ryan. Thanks to both of you for joining me in this hour. I want to start with you, Ryan. A lot of folks have been asking me, what's a content creator? So just give us your basic fifth grade definition of what a content creator is. I think we're having some problems with Ryan's audio. While we work on that, Professor Brock, why don't you tell us what is a content creator?
So just a moment for editorial. Hey, Areva, how you doing?
Hi.
Thank you for having me back on.
Always.
Actually, the term content creator drives me nuts. But the common understanding is that people who go online to post videos largely, but also podcasters and other types of media and manage to make it into a business are considered content creators. And they've had this inordinate influence on media because they're building off a trend from the mid 2000s that was citizen journalism, but also micro celebrity. So they've become incredibly influential because they cover many topics that mainstream news sources or publications or even industries aren't necessarily concerned about. And they've created immense followings. For me, one of the most influential ones is Marcus Brownlee, who is on YouTube under MKBHD. I believe he has easily multi-million followers. More people may be familiar with Jake Paul, who is also, he and his brother Logan Paul are YouTube creators, but they got their start on Vine, right? And they both have managed to spin that into incredibly lucrative careers, putting themselves in front of the camera, doing crazy stuff in order to get views, but also to garner sponsorships.
So why does the term, Professor Brock, content creator, drive you wild, mad, or whatever it is, just drive you crazy?
In part because it's gendered, right? So in the areas that I study, it's typically men are labeled as content creators and women are labeled as influencers, despite the fact that they're both using the same tools, but women tend to cover topics which aren't necessarily as influential on the decision makers in the media sphere and industry. So men largely, right? And so women's stuff is kind of pushed to the side. They're not actually creators. They're just influencers out here doing some rhetorical moves in order to convince people, as opposed to people who actually spend time in front of the camera to build interest in other topics or talk about their passions.
Okay, I think we have Ryan back. Welcome back, Ryan. Let's talk about for you when you hear that term, content creator. What does it mean for you in terms of the work that you do?
It's what I am. It's a name. At first it was influencer. We didn't like that. So now it's content creator, and maybe it'll be digital producer, maybe it'll be something else. But to me, I'm more concerned with what I do as a content creator and who I surround myself with. And being at the DNC, I could tell that there was a lot of curation that was involved in who they invited to attend. Because all content creators or influencers aren't created the same. We're all equal, but we're not all the same. We don't talk about the same things. We come from different ethnicities, different backgrounds. And so I got to see and spend time with like a diverse group of people. And when I say diverse, I also mean the topics that people cover, right? Like I do cover socio-political topics, but that's not like my bread and butter, what I do every day. And so there are people who are like through and through political pundits that run their own channel basically through their content, right? But I feel like I talk about lifestyle, I talk about my family, I talk about sports sometimes, I talk about pop culture. So I was seeing how all these different people from different generations, different walks of life interact with each other and interact in a space that we've never been in before, that we've never actually been, maybe not even respected enough to even be there. But I think it's undebatable to say that we don't have, as content creators, an impact on not just this election and not just elections in general, but like the world and how the world thinks. I feel like a lot of people get their news just by signing on TikTok or Instagram, and that can be bad and it can be good. But I think what I really appreciated is that they didn't look at us like, oh, they're just the content creators, we don't respect them. They really brought us in.
So I take it, Ryan, this is the first time you've ever attended a Democratic National Convention.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Do you know how you were selected? Did you have to submit an application? Did you have to submit a letter of interest? Or were you just randomly contacted by someone at the DNC saying, hey, we like you, we like what we see, we want to give you a credential?
I think everybody had an experience already working with the marketing company and also creators for Kamala, formerly known as Creators Who Vote. And sort of because we had posted something along the lines that was related to the election. And then I worked actually with Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, and did some content with him. So I think everybody that was invited had a previous sort of working relationship with the marketing agency that was working alongside the DNC.
Okay, so there's a marketing agency. Those of you that get to be a certain level have contracts or at least relationships with this marketing agency, and you are supporters. I would presume everybody that was invited had to support the Democratic Party in general and Kamala Harris in particular. Dr. Brock, talk to us about how significant this was. I think Ryan was right when he said that this is a group of people that, maybe a couple of years ago, or at least 10 years ago, would have been disrespected, would not have been invited, given their credentials. They had a whole bar set up. I mean, they were taken care of. They were not treated like second-class citizens. They were treated as well, if not better, than some of the legacy media that was there. How significant was it for the DNC, for the Harris Walls team, for the producers of the convention to reach out to folks like Ryan and say, hey, come on, we want you?
Unmute.
This is not the DNC's first rodeo with people who make a living or show their passion online. If you may recall, there was a blog called Jack and Jill Politics. Baratunde Thurston came to fame through that blog, and Joe Conti, and Cheryl Conti, and they kicked up a fuss for the 2008 Democratic National Convention because even though their blog was one of the top trafficked blogs of that era, and highly influential for Black politics. When it was time to pass out credentials to be at the 2008 convention, they were not necessarily handed credentials like some of the more popular political blogs at the time, like Little Green Football. So I say that all this to say that the DNC has flirted with social media before. This, however, represents a sea change. I think Ryan's comments that they were contacted by a marketing firm instead of by political operatives also signals a different shift in the way the DNC wants to promote itself to younger generations. They're actually trying to reach people where they are. At the same time, I think that legacy media has always had a problem with people who don't have the training or the credentials to be journalists, even though many of those bloggers from that area did have journalistic backgrounds, because they feel in some ways they have been trained, they have ethical codes to represent what's going on at the convention in a professional way with a certain code of ethics. And that's not to say content creators don't, but content creators aren't necessarily constrained by the same rules that mainstream journalists may have. So the Washington Post, for example, has a certain code that people who are reporters for their organization can't post certain opinions about political events on their personal blogs. Right? That wouldn't fly for a content creator. That's how they make their life. And so it's interesting to me. I think it was actually a really good move. I think there's also something we should talk about where it's very clear that the Harris campaign is taking a different social media approach than the Biden campaign did, or that Democrats have as well, right? They're very much more in a attack mode and a clapback mode. And it's definitely reaped dividends for them. And in some ways, it's building off Kamala's previous run as a presidential candidate, where the Black community was featuring videos of her dancing, doing her little auntie dance on the side of a marching band or things like that. They're building off people's familiarity with her as a social media person, right? And then bringing content creators in to augment her appeal to these younger voters, but also to certain, Black elites, college educated, middle class folk as well. So it's an interesting approach.
So Ryan, one of the things that I heard Dr. Brock say is legacy media, like the Washington Post, New York Times, those other papers, obviously they have, or media outlets, their journalists have a code of ethics that they have to follow. That's not true for content creators. You guys get to set your own rules. Have you ever had anyone challenge or question, the content that you are creating, the accuracy of it? We get a lot of disinformation created online, not blaming it on you guys, but there's a lot of disinformation online in general. And there are people who make videos and say things that factually, that's just not true. And then it spreads, it may even go viral. So, what's your experience with that? And what's your process? Do you fact check yourself, or what do you do in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I have to hold myself accountable to my own moral code, but that's just me. But also, I mean, is Fox News legacy media? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a counterpoint to the comparison between content creators and legacy media. I mean, I'm not a supporter of Fox News, nor do I believe in a lot of the things they say, because they have libel suits totaling up to like $1 billion. But I will say there is a certain level of truth that can't be said. This is what Dr. Brock was talking about, that can't be said on legacy media channels by these people who are the reporters and the pundits. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes people want to hear people's truths. And I think that's where the content creation aspect comes in. And I think that is also why curation of who the DNC is bringing in terms of their creators is very important as well. Because I felt a lot of unity, and I never felt, because I heard so many things about, they're treating content creators like they're kings. And I'm like, I didn't feel like a king. I just felt like.
But you have to admit, Ryan, you all were pretty well taken care of, right?
But I don't know. Well, I'll just be honest. Like, I don't have anything to compare it to. So I guess.
And I think that's great. The people that were complaining about that, people complain about everything, but it made sense. They brought you in for a purpose. They wanted you all to be together. You had your own area, your own space, the bar. And I think it was wonderful. You don't have anything to compare it to. I can compare it for you. Yes, you guys were given a lot of special privileges and perks, but you were there to do a job. And the DNC has a job to do. And that's to disseminate information, connect with those voters who aren't going to be watching legacy outlets, because as much as those 30 million people were watching Kamala Harris, that's 10% of the 300, less than 10% of the 300 plus million people in the United States. So there's still a lot of people that needed to hear what was happening at that convention that weren't watching it on cable news or the network stations that were carrying the various speeches. I do want to talk about, though, how do you create content? Because if you guys were just copying what they did on ABC or NBC, it wouldn't, make it very different for your viewers, for those folks that follow you. So how are you creating content that does resonate? I mean, just being young doesn't mean young people are going to follow you or listen to you, or just being a millennial doesn't mean other millennials will listen to you. There has to be something special, unique about how you create this content that, makes it happen, make it resonate with the hundreds of millions of people that follow the 250 content creators that were invited to the DNC. When we come forward, we're going to learn what that process looks like. Ryan Alexander Holmes and Professor Andre Brock are joining me. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Former President Donald Trump is questioning why he should debate Vice President Kamala Harris on ABC News next month. The two are scheduled to take the stage on the network on September 10th in Philadelphia. In a Truth Social post on Sunday, Trump said he watched an interview with Republican Senator Tom Cotton on ABC, which he called biased, and said the network held a discussion with a panel of Trump haters. The former president also asked if the questions will be given to Harris ahead of time. It comes as both campaigns fight over the rules for the debate, including the Harris camp wanting open mics, while the Trump campaign does not. Members of a House task force are in Pennsylvania to get a first-hand look at the site of the attempted assassination of former President Trump. The bipartisan task force says it will be touring the grounds in an effort to not only understand what went wrong that day, but to ensure accountability and to prevent such an incident from happening again. A final report from the task force is expected by December. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Taking a look at the Golden State Freeway, the 5 northbound at Stadium Way. It's a disabled vehicle, not in lanes, everything on the right-hand shoulder. 5 northbound traffic heaviest from the East LA interchange up to the 2. And once you get past the 2, it's reduced speeds on the 5 north all the way up to Olive Avenue. Up ahead in the San Fernando on the 5 northbound at Osborne, it's another accident, and this one is over on the right-hand shoulder. You're backed up from Penrose as you head toward the North San Fernando Valley.
Visit Chevrolet of Montebello for Labor Day deals. Lease a 24 Chevy Equinox EVLT for $195 per month, or rates as low as 1.9% on selected models. ChevroletofMontebello.com.
Buy quality with confidence at Chevrolet of Montebello.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Clippers coach Ty Lue is one of the primary candidates to take over the head coaching job for the U.S. Olympic men's basketball team. Golden State coach Steve Kerr is expected to step down from the position. When Kerr was named head coach for Team USA in 2021, he indicated he would not stay on after the Paris Olympics. Kerr led Team USA to the gold medal 3 weeks ago. Lue was one of Kerr's assistants. All 32 NFL teams have finished their 3-game preseason schedules, which means there will be no NFL games over the Labor Day weekend. It's a schedule issue the TV networks are not happy about. The NFL's 17-game regular season schedule begins September 5th. To ensure the league does not have another open weekend, be prepared for an 18-game schedule next year with just 2 preseason games. The 18-game proposal will be a topic at labor talks between the owners and players union in the offseason. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. By any other name, we demand environmental justice in 2024 and beyond. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
Watch out! You got me!
The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
As we go a little something like this.
Hey, it is me, D.L. Hugo, and I am thrilled to be heard weekdays in my hometown on KBLA Talk 1580. So check out the D.L. Hugo Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580. We got a whole lot to talk about, let me tell you. That's on the real.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. Let's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Creators and their presence at the DNC. The significance of having 250 plus content creators on the ground at the convention, doing interviews, creating content, connecting with those viewers that might not have been watching the DNC on cable news or on some of the networks. Ryan Alexander Holmes is an actor and content creator. He's had some pretty big interviews, including interviews of Lisa Ling, John Cho, LA's Mayor Karen Bass, just to name a few. And also joining us is Professor Andre Brock. He is a media and social media expert. So Ryan, let me ask you, what's the process by which you created content for the DNC that would resonate with the audience that you were targeting?
Well, I typically make things humorous because that lets people's guards down and they're more willing to listen and the message is received. So, I mean, that's really what my process is. I don't know. Technically, I can say that I do a lot of talking head selfie videos, but really it's just like whatever I'm passionate about and whatever I think my audience will connect to at the time. And I usually make all my stuff on my iPhone. And if I really want to get serious, I can edit on like a more advanced program like Final Cut. But most of the time, it's really just me talking to the camera, cracking jokes, talking about the irony, talking about issues that I want my audience to be aware of. You know, I'm mixed race, Chinese and African-American. So I've talked about that in sort of humorous ways of how, like, you know, if Kamala becomes president, it's going to be the first Blasian president and no one's talking about that. So I want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. And certain policies that I feel like would help the everyday average American and debunking myths about her. So. Mm-hmm.
Was it important to you, Ryan, given that this was your first time at the DNC? Were you there to get, you know, like some big interviews of mayors or Congress people or senators? Or were you more interested in just raising awareness about some of the issues you just articulated?
I mean, it was both. I got to meet a lot of people. I got to meet Maxwell Frost, the first Gen Z representative in Congress, and talk to him. And it was really interesting because I'm a millennial. So he's even younger than me and represents an entire generation that I feel like is vastly underrepresented in Congress. And to hear him talk on a very grounded level about the people that he's sort of fighting for, which actually he's the only person to speak for them, was really interesting to me. And so I'm editing that currently and gonna upload that soon.
So Dr. Brock, Ryan says in some ways he's just like a talking head on not his favorite station, Fox or CNN or MSNBC, where he's talking to the camera, debunking myths about Kamala Harris, talking about issues that are important to him. What makes that kind of content creation more significant, if it is, than getting a clip from one of the talking heads on a local cable station?
Make sure I'm not muted. So one of the things to consider is that there's a certain intimacy to watching content creators in the palm of your hand talk to people who they have identified as being important to a particular industry, a particular thing, particularly for political stuff. So talking to Maxwell Frost is an amazing get. Congratulations. And being able to be personable, be affable, right, and to get people to allow you access to them is something that has really been changing in the media environment. I think, though, that it's also crucial to talk about how print coverage has really declined of what goes on in Washington and in politics over the last few years. In the last year alone, the New York Daily News, the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal have all either closed or decimated their Washington bureaus. And thanks to media consolidation, many print organizations don't even have a reporter in DC. They'll cover AOC, they'll cover MTG, right? But they won't necessarily be able to cover, Lauren Underwood, right? Who's doing fantastic work in Chicago, right. Or Jasmine Crockett went viral, but who knew what Jasmine Crockett's voting record was before she went off on MTG? So in many ways, the mainstream media is kind of constrained by their desire to produce to pursue profits, to only focus on things that have shock value, as opposed to the dirty grind that is everyday mainstream politics. And so I think admirably, creators like Ryan have come in to fill that gap. So even if we don't necessarily get to meet always the movers and the shakers, we also do get coverage of people who are important, say for where Ryan is. You're in LA, Ryan. I'm not sure if I caught that. Yeah. So LA people who either come to LA to meet with other folk, or local LA politicians that you simply are not getting either on your television station or through your mainstream coverage. So I think it's really filling a gap, right? I think it's interesting too that so many legacy journalists were upset by the treatment of the content creators, right? And my thing too is, there's something to be said for them needing to also be upset with their employers, many of whom fired or laid off entire divisions after those places successfully unionized, right? So it's you blaming the individuals for being able to fill in a void in news coverage, but you should be looking back at the people who let you go, especially since many of those are women and people of color who would cover our communities and our political interests and aspirations, and now have to kind of hustle as independent journalists to make ends meet.
Well, clearly, we can imagine that these legacy media outlets are not happy about the fact that there were folks on the ground getting big interviews, like you just said, with Maxwell Frost, because that would be considered a big get for any of the number of journalists who were there working for some of those traditional media outlets. Do you think, Ryan, that talking to Maxwell Frost, as Dr. Brock said, up close and personal, do you feel like you got something out of him, that he said something to you that perhaps if he was sitting down at the desk, with one of the big networks, he would be more reluctant to talk about? Do you feel that he was more transparent, more open, more honest with you about his feelings, his thoughts about what was going on at the DNC?
I mean, I think it really is a case by case basis, but yes, the way that I approach him is the way I approach anybody in life. And he also happens to represent where my dad's side of the family is from, in Florida. So we immediately connected off of that. And, my questions were geared more towards like his generation. And our younger generation, like I asked him, how do you talk to our generation and younger who are hopeless about the political situation in America? And, he talks about his history of running for Congress and why he ran for Congress. And when he learned that, if he's a part of the system, he can work with it on the inside to pass laws and legislation and fight for people's rights on the inside, because that's the way things work in this country. You know, is there corruption? There sure is. Is there legislation residue from the past that is definitely prejudiced? Yes. But I think in his mind, the way to correct that is to get inside the system and work from the inside, let more people in, turn the system into something that we want to actually see. And, you know, I don't think that maybe these representatives would feel as safe, especially when Dr. Brock was talking about the sensationalization of media, with maybe a legacy media partner that maybe wants to get, or a journalist that wants to get a hot take, you know, or undermined these representatives to get viral in their way. But it equally could be said about content creators too. So that's why I say it's a case-by-case basis. But the way that I operate is meeting the person where they're at and talk to them like they're just a human being.
Dr. Brock, so these content creators brought to the DNC by a marketing firm, obviously that has a contract with the DNC. Obviously these folks, I assume, right, were you guys paid?
No.
Okay, so you weren't paid, but you were given.
There was a rumor that everyone was getting $20K. And if they want to give me $20K, I'll take it. But I didn't. None of us
you
got
get
it.
your check. Okay, so you did get invited. You got credentials. You had a certain level of access. Do you have, Dr. Brock, on the Republican side, on the MAGA side, do you have the same number of content creators doing something very similar to Ryan, but talking about Donald Trump and JD Vance and talking about MAGA policies and principles? Do we have an equal number of these content creators that have emerged for the Republican Party?
So according to reporting, the Republican National Convention had about 100 creators, not nearly as many, but they also had the benefit of an ecosystem that is tuned to promote that type of engagement. So both Facebook and Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, their algorithm tends to promote that kind of content. If you've been on any of those networks and you're seeing the ads that you're getting, in many cases, you're getting ads for either Republican affiliated people or politics, or products even, right? And so they have the benefit of not necessarily having to rely on content creators because they've done a bit of media capture, right? And so when you think about it from that perspective, they are benefiting from that, but also they're also not trying to be as open about the foolishness that goes on at their conventions, right? So at the Republican National Convention, at CPAC, they often have exhibits and people. The most recent thing at the RNC was people wearing big old Band-Aids on their ear, but it usually gets worse than that. There's definitely somebody running around in blackface. There are people who are openly alt-right or militia affiliated who want to have airtime or be in front of the cameras with these politicians. And that's not something they necessarily want to be unedited out in the on the internet for people to see. And so there's even though they claim to be the party of free speech, there's also a deep measure of control. You would almost say authoritarian, right? To control the type of messages that come out of there so that they can continue to act as if they are the party of family values and the like. But there's some wild stuff going on at those places.
Wow. Thank you for those insights, because we don't see all of those things, as you said, and that's purposeful. It's intentional that we're not able to see some of those images that would be shocking to a lot of people. One thing that we're noticing, Ryan and Professor Brock, is X, formerly known as Twitter, taking down content. So there's been, efforts for people to repost posts that are supportive of Kamala Harris, even posts by, really mega stars who have huge followings. That's to your point, Professor Brock, about these algorithms being written in a way today that favor content, the spreading, distribution of content by MAGA journalists, MAGA content creators. But what are we doing? What are you doing, Ryan? What are other content creators doing in this era where literally content is being taken down that is supportive of Democratic candidates and specifically of Kamala Harris? When we come forward, more on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Support comes from Getty, presenting Memnon, a world premiere theatrical event under the stars. Memnon tells the tale of a powerful Ethiopian king who fights alongside Troy during the city's darkest hour. This epic Greek myth has been overlooked for over a millennium. Until now. Memnon is co-produced by the Classical Theater of Harlem, Thursdays through Saturdays this September at the Getty Villa Museum. Tickets are available now at getty.edu.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
Hey, John, why so glum?
I just got let go. The company's downsizing. This is the third time in the last 2 years. I'm done with this.
Have you thought about My Computer Career? I've heard they can train you for a career in IT in just a few months, including cybersecurity and the basics of AI. And you don't need prior training or experience. Now that's a recession-resistant career.
Wow, thanks. I'll check them out.
Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. mycomputercareer.edu. Financial aid is available for qualified students, including the GI.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Ryan Alexander Holmes, a content creator, and Professor Andre Brock, a expert on media and social media, are joining me. A couple of things have come up. Ryan, for you in particular, where are your videos, these videos, this content that you're creating, where are you getting the most traction?
Instagram for sure, and TikTok as well. I mean, Twitter or X is, I mean, we know why they're taking down the Democratic stuff, the liberal stuff. We know who's running it. But yeah, Instagram. But I've heard also that Meta has put limiters on political content. So I feel like maybe the Republicans and the people who have who are on that side have figured out a way to get past those, maybe to make their engagement higher. But what I realize is my engagement is higher when I talk about a policy, but I do not frame it in a political way, right?
Mm-hmm. So give us an example.
What would an example of that? I mean, if we're talking about the price of groceries, and I just talk about why inflation exists, and the corporations that do that, and what the current administration is doing to fight that, or what the government is doing to fight that. That's different than saying you need to vote for this person because they're doing this. Because a lot of people are triggered just by the word Kamala or by the word Democrat. And the dance as a content creator, because we're very learned in the ways of getting our engagement as high as we need it to be, is understanding how to make something universal, yet still get your point across and still be you, and still fight for the causes that you want, but do it in a way where the most people have their guard down and are willing to listen. Like, humor is a technique, obviously, but also talking about it in a nonpartisan way is another technique.
So I know both of you have seen Piles, and I guess Piles would qualify as a content creator. He has this viral video now where he's going off on people, saying Black men who are constantly requesting that VP Kamala Harris explain herself. He says to them, y'all cool with the white man not explaining himself. So you use humor, Ryan. Professor Brock, Piles uses profanity.
I mean, Plies is he's a multi-platinum award-winning artist, rapper, right? He has a degree in mechanical engineering, if I remember correctly. So he's never been stupid, but his down-home aura and his capacity to give the impression that he's doing real talk, which is something, Black people really believe in, I think has definitely catapulted him at the forefront of basically everyday folk who are engaging with how we treat our politicians, how we talk to and about our politicians in a way that I find really entertaining. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, you're right. Very, very bright guy. I follow him. You can't help but follow him. Even if you don't follow him, people will send you his videos.
Correct.
And you're right. It's his folksy charm, his Southern accent, I'm not trying to be grammatically correct, but I'm just trying to talk to y'all in a language and in a way that you will understand, and pepper it with a bunch of MFs. You're laughing by the time he's gotten his message across. Now, I don't know if you saw this recent video. Then Charlemagne the God responded to his video saying, well, wait a minute, you're taking us to task because we're challenging a candidate or asking a candidate to explain their positions. So there seems to be, Ryan, and I don't know if you're caught in this kind of battle of Black men. I know you said you are of mixed race, you're Chinese and African American, but there seems to be this fight over, who's going to win over the Black male vote. And Charlemagne is constantly saying, well, he was at the convention, obviously at the DNC, that he's not, i.e., in favor of Trump, but he doesn't think Democrats should just give their votes, that people should just vote for Democrats simply because they should earn it. Blah, blah, blah. We all know what he says. But
yeah,
do you find yourself caught in this Black male, battle that's happening online between those Black men who support Kamala, like D.L. Hughley and Anthony Anderson, all who were at the convention, and those like, I'm going to put Charlemagne the God on the other side?
I mean, the short answer is no, because I'm focused on policies, and a lot of those arguments are based on misinformation. So if we're attacking the source, then these conversations don't even exist. And so I'm more interested in that than playing this sort of dance where we're literally fighting each other over something that's not even real. I think that's a waste of time, and I think it can easily be solved by actually checking the source of the information that you're being given. Mm-hmm. I know there's a rumor that she was locking away thousands of Black men for marijuana charges, but the overall number was low hundreds and lower than the previous prosecutor before her. So then I'm just like, wait, but I'm on TikTok and I'm on Instagram and I am getting comments all the time saying that she's not good for the Black community or Black men. But I'm like, where are you getting your information from? And that's the diabolical nature, right, of misinformation and disinformation, that people will not fact check something. They'll see a viral post and they'll just believe it.
Yeah. And so it's hard to get them to back away from it.
Very hard.
Dr. Brock, and many people don't want the facts. They want to stay stuck in their opinions and in their feelings sometimes about the issue about Kamala Harris and who she arrested while she was district attorney of San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I mean, the facts on that have been disseminated, articulated over and over and over again. So for those people that want to know those facts, it's readily available. It's no big secret. But there are people who have gotten locked into that narrative that she, prosecuted like every Black man, which will be 5 in San Francisco, and they don't want to move away from that narrative. Do you see any movement in that regard? And what happened at the DNC? Do you think that's a way that we can start to see some movement around that?
I would like to think so, but there are two trends that are happening that really have me concerned. One is, who in the heck said that Charlemagne the God should be our go-to political correspondent? Like, especially since he had my favorite name for her, Gabrielle Confederacy. He had Candace, what's her name, Owens on his show not too long ago, and he did not ask any probing questions about what her political position was. He let her do her little I Remember I Was
Well,
Black tour and
let
didn't
me
even
stop
say
you,
nothing.
Professor Brock. We know
Go.
why he's selected. We don't, we're all smart people here. We know why.
Right.
Because, that person who will parrot the party line and parrot the narrative that legacy media wants to hear is the person they're going to go to.
One of the best played jobs for Black people in media is to put down other Black people. Right.
Yeah.
We can talk about Jason
Not
Whitlock and
new.
others.
Not
Right.
new.
That's not new at all. The other piece, though, and the reason I think some of the reasons why you're seeing, Ryan, your comments getting filled with Black men who recently started their account and have 6 numbers after their name is that I think there's a concerted effort by different actors, and I'm not going to necessarily go full tinfoil hat, but it's really odd how your mentions will get swarmed by people who have never interacted with you before, have brand new accounts, but yet have all this vitriol about what the Blacks do, or as a Black man, I feel, right? And so some people will say these are bots, but I think there's actively a campaign, and this is something that happened in 2020 and in 2016, particularly 2016, where people were getting where accounts were being manned by people who are not Black but claiming to be Black and pushing misinformation into the community. So the same thing they're saying about Kamala and the marijuana convictions is the same thing they were saying about Hillary Clinton and super predators, as if Hillary Clinton was an elected official at the
Yep.
time that her husband was in office.
And no matter
so
how we tried to debunk
Correct.
that, we couldn't. I'm sorry,
Cannot.
guys. We're out of time. What an interesting
I'm sorry, I
and
ran my
enlightening
mouth.
conversation. No. Always great. Always great information. Thank you so much, Ryan. A pleasure meeting you. Thank you. Professor Brock, we're going to continue this conversation. This is a conversation we're going to have all the way through November and probably beyond, because when the Republicans lose, they're not going to accept their loss, but they will be losing, because we're going to make sure of that. Thanks to both of you for joining me. Next voice that you hear will be Ryan.
Open borders and voting rights for illegal immigrants. He went on to criticize President Biden and Harris for the deadly withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan 3 years ago. 13 U.S. service members were killed in a terrorist attack during